So once again, my name is Olga, and here's Sylvia, and we will present today's webinar. At today's webinar, we will talk about some megatrends. What is it? About climate change, depletion of resources, linear economy, the circular economy, and product life in circular economy.
Yes, exactly. We'll start with megatrends. I will try to say something more in this topic. So megatrends are a definition of the direction of social, political, and cultural changes taking place in connection with the transition observed by many scholars from the industrial to the post-industrial era, also known as the information age. So now we will say more about some megatrends groups by topic. So first of all, we have society. We have, for example, here we have 4 examples of megatrends. First is growing population. Demographic changes lead to an aging population. Industrial and rapidly developing countries, in particular, are confronted with a significant aspect of demographic changes. The aging population, in other words, an increase in number of older people and decrease in the birth rate. Advances in medicine and greater awareness of health lifestyle have contributed to significant global increase in life expectancy over the past 50 years. At the same time, there was a drastic drop in the number of births all over the world, but above all in industrialized. Oh,
I will be yes.
Okay. Okay.
Just speak.
Thank you. According to the forecast, the percentage of people over 65 by 2060 is expected to be around 20 to 30% of total population worldwide. The effects of this phenomena are decrease in labor supply in OECD countries, increase in working age dependency of the elderly. Okay, this is about society. Next group is about environment. So, anthropogenic environmental pollutants include increases in the greenhouse effect, but also substances introduced into ecosystems and causing their destruction. Starting with atmospheric pollution, particulate matter, sulfur, and nitrogen compounds, toxic chemical compounds. By water pollution, we have there toxic, chemical, biological pollutions, heavy metals, plastic, and microplastic. To soil pollution, heavy metal, toxic chemicals, and soil aridity. To light and noise pollution, particularly in cities and urban functional areas. About growing global danger of hunger, we have 37 and 4% of the land area is devoted to agricultural production. Taking into account the potential decrease in agricultural production connected with progressing climate change, growing environmental pollution, and negative consequences of intensive monocultural and agricultural production, it may be feared that the supply of food will not be able to meet the demand. To feed the world growing and healthy population, global food production will need to increase by up to 60 percent by 2550 or even double. So in easy word, we need more and more food. Electricity production will increase by 79% between 2018 and 2050, with electricity accounting for 25% of energy demand in 2050, 80% today. There is a need for increased energy efficiency, sort switching, and investment in technology. Global energy demand has been growing steadily for over 150 years and is strongly connected with economic growing and technological development. Humanity is reshaping the landscape and consuming natural resources at a rate that prevents their natural recovery. To allow for the natural regeneration of planetary resources, we would need not one, but almost two planets. Changes in ecosystems are a result of human activities, make them lose their natural ability to reproduce and auto-regulate, and the environmental becomes hostile to some organisms. According to a World Wild Foundation, data from I think it's 1970 to 2014, the population of free living vertebrates declined by 60%. Expressed and living planet index of 0.4. Okay, next we have globalization. About globalization, I think that everyone is familiar with this topic. So, according to the World Bank and the Union, 270 million people, it's 3 and 4% of world population, currently live outside their country of origin. 90% of them are economic migrants. The rest are mainly refugees, people who had to leave their places of residences due to persecution, health, and life threats. The same sources forecast that the trend of population migration in the 2050 perspective will be grow, and in 2050 the above rate will reach 4%. This will mean that there will be something around 400 million people living in the world outside the country of birth. It is worth nothing there that immigrants are primarily targeted in urban areas, and more than 1 third of people of world lives in cities. Massive migration to cities leads to over crowdfunding and poverty, and overwhelms the government's ability to provide basic services. Okay, technology. No, economy, sorry. Next one is about economy. So in economy, we will talk about only two megatrends. A slowing economy is not something to be taken for granted. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the global economy was suffering from problems such as underinvestment, high debt, inequality, and too slow productivity growth. It's hard to expect a quick recovery because even before the pandemic hit, global growth was slow and debt levels were high. So maybe something more positive. It's about changing the global economy power. The focus of global growth is changing. The center of gravity of global economy is shifting towards Asia, and indirectly to the countries and region that Asia, especially China, favors. So maybe someday we only will be saying about Asia. Okay, so technology. First of all, digitalization of factories makes it possible to reduce the number of foremen and managers needs to manage employees on a single shift. In the future, this will be allowed for a further increase in management span, or the number of people directly reporting to a single leader. Digitalization will provide him, the leader, with digital eyes and ears without compromising the productivity and job security of his subordinates. Not yet. Automation of work, on the other hand, means replacing work done by human with work done by an automate. Let's look at such example currently operated by specialized workers and technicians, metal working centers, CNC. In the future, their work may be automatized because the machines they operate will be operated by robots. This, of course, is just an example of job automating. The processing power of processors translates not only into technological progress expressed in successive generation of devices such as computers or smartphones, but also into the growing capabilities and new application of the software installed on them. The most significant consequences of the increase in computing power is the fall in prices, the spread of technology, which entails real productivity gains.
Okay. So after this little think about megatrends, we will skip to the climate changes, which are um, some of the big megatrends right now also. So what are the climate changes? First of all, we need to start from this: what is the climate and what is the weather? The climate is a set of the atmospheric phenomenon and processes characteristic of a given area, shaped by the physical and geographical characteristics of a given area. And the weather is the part of this everyday weather out of the window. Climate changes is a change in the condition and characteristics of the climate that last for an extended period of time, like decades or maybe more. The greenhouse effect is a phenomenon whereby the greenhouse gases present in a planet's atmosphere increases the temperature of our planet. And going to the consequences of the climate change, they could be a long-term one and a short one, short-term. Um, Climate change is a huge humanitarian, economic, and ecological threat to the modern world. Millions of people are suffering from the consequences of the climate change, such as rising water levels, coastal erosions, more frequent droughts, floods, and forest fires. Unless man takes immediate action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, climate change will only accelerate. Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel is alerting that if the global average temperature rise by more than 2 degrees of Celsius, the consequences for the world will be disastrous. According to analysis already in this decade, at least 207 million people in Latin America, Asia, and Africa will be affected by water shortages. By 2050, a further 130 million Asians will be hungry, and by 2100, crops in Africa are expected to fall by as much as 90%.
Okay, so next step is depletion of resources.
Sorry.
I think that everyone heard about ecological debt. So we have Ecological Debt Day. Is an indicator of resource consumption and day that informs each year that humanity has used all their natural resources available on the earth for a given year. According to Global Footprint Network and international agency, maybe first of all, I will say that in this year, in 2021, the Ecological Debt Day was on 29th of July. So I think it's pretty surprised. Okay, so according to Global Network, Footprint Network and international agency dealing with sustainable development, consuming as in today, we need a planet 55% larger than the one we have now. I don't worry. I don't want to worry you, but I think in the next 10 years, maybe the Ecological Debt Day will be on May, maybe April.
For example, in Poland, it's in May. The most important raw materials that are depleted and we would like to say something about them. It's coal, petroleum, and water. As a result of a very high demand for fossil energy resources that emerged after the Second World War, some of the deposits were exploited, especially in the second half of the 20th century. Today, the hard coal reserves in Western European are almost completely depleted. There are still quite significant amount of the coal reserves in, for example, Poland and in Ukraine, but they occur at great depths in difficult geological mining conditions, as a result of which they are difficult to access and very expensive to extract. Already in Poland and Ukraine, the depth of the mines exceed 1,000 meters. It's 1 kilometer under the ground. The latest figures on the consumption of hard coal in the European Union show a further annual decline, down 4% year on year to 226 million tons in 2018. The production of hard coal in the European Union also declines year by year. In 2018, production was 74 million tons, 6% below 2017 levels, and 80% less than 368 million tons in 1919.
Okay, the same goes for oil. Countries once considered to be oil countries, such as the United States, Romania, Ukraine, today has relatively small olive and gas reserves. The North Sea oil bearing basin, discovered in the late 1950s, is currently showing a decline in oil production. This means that the increase in resources newly discovered at the bottom of the shelf is in this area doesn't compensate for oil production. This is particularly true of countries such as the UK and Norway. Significant losses of oil resources are visible in United States, which is the largest consumer of oil. All these problems suggest that the question of the sufficiency of mineral resources and especially energy resources for future generations is raised. The main reason for this phenomenon is the lack of substitutes that would meet the currently energy demand. The European Union is almost 100% dependent of imported oil. The dependency on virgin oil is the last few years is at its peak, the highest rate being recorded in 2015, almost 100.
The third resource is water. Although water covers over 75% of Earth's surface, only 3% of its volume is fresh water. Not only does fresh water constitute less than 3% of water resources, but the majority of it occurs in form of ice and groundwater. For example, it is distant from large clusters of people or very difficult to access. Therefore, people mainly use the part of the water that takes an active part in the hydrological cycle. It's only about 0.3% of fresh water. The amount of water available depends on the amount of precipitation on the one hand, and the amount of evaporation and runoff of the water. Other complaining and comparing these quantities, we can determine which areas have excess water. For example, a moist equatorial forest, and which are facing its deficiency, like Sahel zone. The growing number of people in the world is causing an increasing demand for water for sanitary, agricultural, or breeding purpose. Also, the water requirements of industrial and service plants must be taken into account. These needs are not always met. It is estimated that about 1.2 billion people, or almost 20% of the world's population, is experiencing drinking water shortages every day.
Okay, so we have other critical raw materials. Recently, the list of critical raw materials from 2017 includes, for example, lithium and cobalt, raw materials important for the electronics industry and the development of digitalization and further technology. Now we have, I think, almost 30 position on the list, something like that. And it starts from 1 or 2. So,
and that was the beginning to our main topic, which was linear economy and the second circular economy. So linear economy has a motto. It's take, use, and throw it away. This economic model has been widely used since the Industrial Revolution. It is as follows. Companies extract the primary raw materials. Raw materials are processed into final products. Then the products are sold, and then we buy it and use it. And finally, it's thrown away.
such an approach makes sense with regard to specific raw materials and demand for them. This model is insufficient in the present world situation, when the number of people on Earth is still growing and their needs are growing too. Currently, mankind's demand for non-renewable resources is 50% higher than the planet can provide. Development of economic process in the linear model. First step is acquisition of raw materials, primary energy materials and energy. Step 2 is raw materials are pre-processed materials. Step 3, manufacture of finished product. Step 4, use, maintenance and repairs. Step 5, landfills, heaps, etc.
And the next slide is here. Okay, so effects of linear economy, the bad effects are greenhouse effect, ecosystem degradation, increased delivery risk, and water resources and data fiction. Greenhouse effect is one of the main causes of climate change on Earth. It is triggered by an increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The main reason for the increased emissions of this compound until 1960s. In the 20th century, there was the burning of coal and then natural gas and cement production. Since the middle of the 20th century, the coal and CO2 emissions have been strongly increasing, annually exceeding 8 billion tons on average. Second effect is ecosystem degradation. The linear management model products a huge amount of waste that is not recycled or reusable. This results in landfills, mine heaps, and even things like the Great Pacific Garbage Spot. This state of affairs is deadly in the long run for both of the planet and the humanity. Water resources and their scarcity. As we have already said, we are experiencing a steady increase in demand for fresh water. It is caused by population growth, urbanization, and changing diet. The largest recipients of freshwater and entities related to agriculture. Agriculture crops, but most of all, animal husbandry. The demand for freshwater is growing exponentially, and its availability in many regions of the world is very limited. And the last but not least, increased supply risk. As certain and readily available deposit of raw materials continue to become scarce. Mm, um, Uncertainties about the supply of raw materials and materials increases. This is due to the limited abundance of earth. The threat of accessibility translates into price fluctuations, the condition of industries, and might even lead to economic crises. As product that is subjected to strong fluctuation is, for example, oil. Its prices depends largely on its availability, but also on the geopolitical situation in the world. In the current global situation, with a constantly growing population and therefore demand, the system of linear economy is not enough. It leads to the irreparable damage of both local and global proportions. Above all, it has a negative impact on the environment, lack of recycling, and loss of raw materials. On one, economic stability. It is necessary to reduce the rate of growth and consumption and to incorporate mechanisms aimed at protecting the environment into everyday life. This is linked to a closed production cycle. It is important to build a system in which raw materials and products can be reused so that global crisis can be reduced.
Okay, so what is this circular economy really about? Mm, it's about a closed loop economy. A closed loop economy is about concept aimed at rational use of resources and reduction of negative environmental impact of manufactured products. This is to say we aim to burden the environment as little as possible with our activities. We try to ensure that our products retain their value for as long as possible. For example, they are reusable, and as soon as our product becomes a waste, let us try to use it again or part of it for other purpose or as secondary raw materials.
Okay, so we've got the first idyllic look, but we need to put some work into it for that. The circular economy operates in the name of the 3R principle: reduce, reuse, recycle, relating to resource management. The first step to reduce the consumption of raw materials is to avoid creating waste. The second step is to give a second life to products already purchased, if possible. For example, reuse of packaging, reworking of clothes, upcycling. If one, on the other hand, the degree of wear and tear or the type of objects does not allow for their reuse, it is necessary to ensure their proper disposal. Step 3. Recycling. So, circular economy in particular phases of a product's life.
The circular economy model consists on 5 stages. The most important of them, design, recycling, are market in red. No, it's not. First one, designing is the first and the most important stage. Exequo, the careful selection of raw materials and manufacturing methods is crucial because only the best solutions are and materials are selected. The products can be used for years, and even after their use, they are recovered as raw materials under recycling. The next stage is production. Its size, careful plans to meet the needs of the market and not to produce excess that would later be deposited in the warehouse hall. Additionally, the amount of waste is minimized during production. For example, if steam is used for production, it is captured in special devices and then condensed and can be reused for production in the same process. The third stage is stage. It's about increased service life, creative uses, multiple users of one item. The fourth stage is also about the consumer plays the most important role in this stage. In this case, the task of enterprise is to try to increase the awareness of consumer precisely in the operation of the circular economy. It is at this stage that the product should spend as much time as possible. Examples of keeping a product in circular are, for example, selling it then when we no longer need it, repairing it instead of throwing it away, and proposing it if it's possible. The fourth and equally important stage as designing is recycling. Very efficient segregation of waste and the responsibility of society, which we are trying to shape, means that its efficiency ranges from 50 to as much as 90%, depending on the product. Thanks to this, what is a telephone today can be disassembled tomorrow, and gold parts from the processor can be turned into, for example, jewelry. The last stage, which is reached by a negligible part of the manufactured items, is disposal. Unfortunately, we are not able to recycle everything. Some materials are simply not suitable for them, and the ones that we give it are also limited in number. After sometimes even the most durable matter, we need to throw it away. So the best idea is design specially places to keep them in the best way.
And I was muted. Exactly. And this special design is named eco design, and it can be used both in the design of a new and the improvement of existing products, services, or processes. Hence, the scope of it, its application is very wide. This is due to the very concept of life cycle thinking, which is one of the foundational principles of eco-design. Environmental aspects should be analyzed and incorporated into product design and development. The measures aimed to reduce the negative impact on the environment at every stage of the life cycle, from the extraction of primary raw materials through production, transport, use, to final management, the final disposal of waste generated or its reuses. Hence, this concept can be used in any industry. Environmental criteria can and should be included both at the stage of selecting raw materials and the materials used for production, as well as the production processes themselves. Sustainable production. Products should be designed in such a way as to be recyclable or reusable, making waste management easier and less costly. In the product life cycle slide, product planning, product design, prototyping are these three main and first parts of designing. And here we need to think about how to recycle, how to reuse the full product after the usage. Preparation of production and production process. Here we need to think about um, how to be the most sustainable and how to create the most sustainable production process without waste through the production, and with using sources as much as possible. And here we need to think about this, for example, emissions. Then we have the usage. The usage should be the longest period of life cycle of the product, and the usage is on our side. And here we need to think about how to use it as much as possible and as long as possible. And the last one is recovery and disposal. Each of these steps should be accompanied by the environmental aspects. The product should be designed so that it can be recovered from it. This is called design from recycling. And the benefits of implementing circular economy in the enterprises. Here we have some emojis that we can imagine about the good, really good, um, about the really good, and here you see it, benefits of implementing circular economy here. First of all, we have the quality and the time we can use it. It's one of the most important, and for us as the users, we need to think and remember about it. Also, the benefit from the company is that the company is more sustainable and more eco-friendly. So we would like to buy from this company, not from the other. And also, we have the usage of the raw materials as the maximum. So, as an economical aspect, it's really important to use the material and raw material as much as it is possible to down the costs.
In the current world situation, with an ever-growing number of people, and therefore demand a linear economic system is not enough. So we should move on to the circular economic system described today. We hope you found today's webinar interesting and you learned new and interesting things. Thank you for your attention.
If you have any further questions about this and about this topic,